everyone, and welcome to Top Score Writing's live lessons for grades 6 through 8. My name is Mrs. Jones, and I will be your instructor for the next 6 weeks. Now, over the next few weeks, we are going to take a dive into writing an expository or an informative or an explanatory essay. So let's take just a moment and define what those genres are. Anytime we are writing for the purpose of communicating information, when we are presenting information on a topic or a situation or a concept for the purpose of helping our reader to understand that particular topic a little bit better, we are writing to inform or teach or explain. Now, some states call this informative writing, others call it explanatory or expository writing. But no matter what title we use, we are always writing for the same purpose. So these 6 weeks, we're going to be focusing on writing an essay to convey information to our reader. Now, when you registered for this first live lesson, and we're going to be meeting 12 times over the next 6 weeks, you notice that there were 2 passage sets that accompanied the registration link. The first was titled The Gold Rush, and then the second one was titled The Moon. We are going to be using these 2 text sets over the next 6 weeks as we learn how to write expository or informative essays. What I would suggest is that every student has a copy of both of these text sets and that they keep them in a writing folder or a notebook. You're going to keep your text sets, your planning paper, and your writing paper together over the next 6 weeks. And every time we meet, we will be working on these essays. We are going to break apart writing an expository or informative essay into small, manageable skills. We're going to learn how to do each part of the writing process, beginning with planning today. So we are going to switch to the document camera now so that I can share my text set for you. The first one we're going to take a look at is the Gold Rush. Now, I will always be using the Gold Rush passage set to model. So before I ever ask you to do any particular writing skill, I will first show you how to do it myself. Now, your role during this modeling time is to be watching, listening, paying attention, and understanding what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Because in a few moments, you're going to have an opportunity to practice the exact same writing skills that I am demonstrating. So the first thing that we do when we are presented with a text set is, of course, read it. Now, we are only going to be meeting for 30 minutes today, so we don't have time to read both of these text sets in their entirety right at this moment. I'm going to encourage you, though, that after this lesson is complete, to go back and reread these articles for yourself. So to begin, I'm just going to give you a summary of the Gold Rush so that we can jump right into the analyzing the prompt and planning process. So here we have source 1. So each text set is going to be comprised of multiple sources, multiple articles. Some text sets have 2 articles, some have up to 4. So this first text set about the Gold Rush has 2 different sources. And you can see the source numbers are clearly labeled at the top along with the title. So if we take a look at source number 1, the very first section of text has a heading titled Gold. Now, this whole section, if I was to summarize it for you, is about the definition of gold and where it comes from. If we scroll to the bottom of the page, we see another subheading titled The 49ers. This section of the article is all about the year 1849 and how people started to move to California in droves. So people that had lived on the east coast of Florida heard that people in California had discovered gold, and this gold was extremely valuable. So looking to increase their way of life, to increase their income, a lot of the people living on the east coast of the United States began moving to the west coast. And this was in the year 1849. So these people that immigrated from one side of the country to the other became known as the 49ers. Now, if we go to the second page of the same source, source number 1, in this section of text, we learn all about what life was like during this time period. And this time period is actually called the Gold Rush. There was such a rush of people moving and immigrating to the other side of the country, it actually got its own name. And this is all about what life was like for the immigrants during this time. It was not an easy way of life. It was very difficult to move from the East Coast to the West Coast. And then when you arrived, it was hard to settle and set up a life there, especially if you had a family. So this section of the article is going to go into a lot of detail about life during that time. We move on to source number 2. This title is Gold Rush Entrepreneurs. And just like the title suggests, this entire passage is going to be about different people who are entrepreneurs during this time period. And here I have made a summary, a list for you of the 4 different entrepreneurs that they talk about. So the first is Samuel Brannan, and he was a businessman who realized quite quickly that there was a lot of money to be made in the selling of materials and supplies to the 49ers. These people had just moved to a brand new state, a brand new section of the country, and they had nothing. So they needed to buy food, building supplies, clothes, tools to use to mine. Everything that a human could possibly need to exist had to be purchased. And he realized that he could be that person that supplied all of those materials. Then we have 2 other gentlemen named, and these may sound familiar to you, Henry Wells and William Fargo. They realized that all of these 49ers, these people that were participating in the gold rush, were making a lot of money. And when you make a lot of money, you need a place to store your money. So they opened a bank over in California. You may have heard of it, called Wells Fargo. It still exists today. And they were entrepreneurs in the banking industry. Finally, we have Levi Strauss. Does that name sound familiar? Right? I'm sure everyone has owned a pair of Levi jeans in some time of their lives. Well, Levi Strauss was a German immigrant, and he was also a tailor, which means he made clothes. He moved to California during this time to sell canvas. He thought that there would be a large need for material to make tarps, to make tents, to make covering for wagons. And eventually, as we all know, he also grew his business into the manufacturing of jeans, and that company is still around today. So on this source, or in this source, we will find lots of information about these 4 different entrepreneurs. So that gives you a summary of the information that is found in this very first text set, the Gold Rush. And again, I'm going to encourage you to go and read this for yourself after this lesson is over. Now, let's take a look at the prompts for this particular text set. Now, if you've never heard the word prompt before, let me take just a moment and explain what a prompt is. A prompt is a set of directions for the writer. It tells you what your job is to write about. So what should your essay be focused on? Now, there are prompts of all different varieties. There are prompts that will direct you to write a narrative, which is when you tell a story. There are prompts that will direct you to write an argumentative essay, which is when you form an opinion about a certain topic. And then there are prompts that will direct you to inform your reader about a specific topic or explain to your reader about a topic. And again, today, since we are focusing on informative or expository essays, we are going to be looking at prompts that do just that. They ask us as the writer to write an essay that conveys information to our readers. So here we have 2 different prompts. These are both based upon the Gold Rush text set that we just took a look at. These prompts are different though. The first one says, write to inform your reader about the history of gold in California. Now, whenever you are presented with a prompt, the first thing you should do is identify the keyword. Now, a keyword is a special word that lets you know what your job is for writing. What type of genre are you being asked to write? So here I see this keyword inform. Whenever I see the word inform, that should be like a bell ringing or a light flashing. It lets me know as a writer, my job now is to write an essay where I'm conveying information to my reader. So my key word in this prompt is inform. Now, the second thing that we should ask ourselves when we're analyzing a prompt is this prompt asking us to write about something in general or something specific? Some prompts are very open-ended. They're extremely broad. You could write about anything you want related to a particular topic. And other prompts are going to have a more narrow focus. They're going to ask you to write about something specific. Now, if we look at this prompt, it's asking us to inform our reader about the history of gold in California. This is an extremely open-ended prompt. So this is asking us to write about something in general. Now, the third thing that we want to ask ourselves when we're analyzing a prompt, so identifying the keyword is the first thing. Asking yourself, is this directing me to write about something general or specific? That's the second step. The third thing we want to ask ourselves is, what are we being asked to write about? So in our own words, could we restate what this prompt is asking us to write about? Well, this prompt is asking me to write about the gold rush. It's asking me to write about the discovery of gold, how it began and how it evolved. So if you ask yourselves those three questions, if you identify the keyword, determine if the prompt is asking you to write about something general specific, and then summarize the prompt or restate it in your own words, you know that you have a thorough understanding of your writing task. And that is the very first and probably one of the most important stages of the writing process. You need to be able to accurately determine your purpose and your task. Now let's take a look at a different prompt. Now this prompt is also about the Gold Rush text set that we just read, but it has a different specific writing task. This prompt says, your town's library is hosting an exhibit on the significance of gold throughout history. Write an expository article for the exhibit's display, highlighting how and why the gold rush came to be. Your essay should be based on ideas and concepts found in the passage set. Step number 1, identify the key word. The key word in this prompt is expository. Whenever I see the word inform or expository, I know I am being asked to write an essay that conveys information to my reader. Step 2, am I being asked to write about something general? Is this a very broad, open-ended prompt? Or is this a more narrow focus specific prompt? Well, let's go back. It says, write an expository essay for the exhibit's display, highlighting how and why the gold rush came to be. How and why the gold rush came to be. Is this very general and open-ended, or does this have a narrower focus? That's right. This is a more specific prompt. It is much more narrowly focused. I am only being asked in this prompt to write about how and why the gold rush came to be. So if we go back to our text set, in response to the second prompt, I could write about information from source 1. But here in source number 2, where they're talking about gold rush entrepreneurs, does this relate or connect to the writing task of highlighting how and why the gold rush came to be? It does not. So since this is a more narrowly focused prompt, it's asking me to write about something specific, I have to be very choosy when selecting topics and information to include in my essay. This type of information would not be appropriate to include in my essay in response to prompt 2. So this is why it is so important that we take time at the beginning of the writing process to accurately analyze a prompt. And finally, step number 3, can we summarize or restate in our own words what the prompt is asking us to do? Sure. So this prompt is asking us, how did the gold rush occur? So what were the events that preceded the gold rush that allowed it to happen? Why did it happen? What were the reasons? What were the causes? What were the influences that allowed the gold rush to be such a significant event in history? So now, again, that we have participated in this 3-step process, we have accurately analyzed that prompt as well and determined exactly what our purpose and task would be if responding to that second prompt. Now, of course, when you're writing an essay, you're only going to be writing in response to one prompt. So even though we looked at 2 of them, this is the prompt that we are going to write in response to. This prompt says, the history of California is very unique. Think about what you have read about California history and write an expository essay about the history of gold in California. So my keyword, expository. I know what my purpose is, right? I'm writing to inform my reader, to convey information about a topic. What topic am I being asked to give information about? The history of gold in California. So is this a general prompt? Is it broad and open-ended, or is it specific? It's rather broad, isn't it? I'm just asking to write about the history of gold. So this has a lot of different options that I can include in my essay. So now that I've determined my purpose and my task, I'm ready to plan. Now, whenever we are planning for an informative or an expository essay, so whenever we are planning for an essay where we're going to be informing our reader or presenting information, we are going to plan with an ITC outline. Now, ITC is an acronym, so I'm going to go ahead and jot that down here for you. It makes it super easy for you to remember how to create a planning outline. I stands for introduction, T stands for topics, and C stands for conclusion. So here in our ITC outline, you see I and then a line. Here's where I'm going to write what I will include in my introduction. I'm not going to write down every single word I'm going to write in my introduction. I'm not going to write down all of my details. I'm not going to write down my hook. I'm just going to write 1 or 2 words that emphasize the most important part of my introduction. So the most important part of your introduction should be where you state your central idea. Some teachers call this a controlling idea. Some call it a central idea. It's very similar to the main idea. So, you know, when you read something, let's say a science article or even a story in class, your teacher will ask you, what is the main idea? What was that article or that story mostly about? Well, when we're writing an essay, our central idea or our controlling idea is basically the main idea of our essay. So what is this entire essay going to be about? Well, the history of gold in California. Now, all I'm going to write is history of gold. I'm not going to write in complete sentences. I'm not going to write the central idea of my essay is the history of gold. I'm just going to write the history of gold. I'm going to make it very short. My planning outline is never going to be scored by my teacher. No one's going to look at my planning outline except for me. Your planning outline is going to guide you as you write your essay. So it needs to be meaningful to you. It needs to make sense to you, but it is not anything that your reader is going to read. If we could think for a moment about going on a trip. Let's imagine that you and your family are going to travel to a brand new place you've never been before, and you know where you want to end up, but you're not sure how to get there. Well, how are you going to figure out how to get to this new place? You're probably going to go to Google Maps or Apple Maps, right? You're going to type in the address and you're going to get directions. The directions will say, okay, start on this road, go for so long and then turn right, and then go down that road and then go left. You will receive step-by-step directions that tell you how to get from your beginning location to your ending location. Well, your planning outline is just like a map, but it's for writing. So your introduction is where your essay is going to start. Then every piece of your planning outline is going to be a step-by-step guide of where you're going next. So first we're going to write about this, then this, then this, then this, and then this. This is where we start, and this is where we end up. It is super important that we create a good, solid planning outline before we start so that our essay makes sense, so that it flows, and it is presented in a logical manner for our reader. We want our essay to make sense because remember, our purpose is to teach and to inform, right? So our essay, the central idea of our essay that we are going to state in our introduction is the history of gold. What you write next to I is always going to be the same thing you write next to C, because we want to end our essay by restating our central idea. Not in the exact same way, not using the exact same words. We'll learn how to write conclusions later. But we always want to end our essay by summarizing what the whole thing was about. What you write next to I and C is always going to come from your prompt. Because remember, your prompt is where you determine your task for writing, what your purpose for writing is. So that is our I and our C. Now let's talk about our T's. T1, T2, and T3. T means topics. So what are the 3 topics that we want to write about in our essay? Now, these are going to be topics that we have a lot of information to share with our reader about. These are not going to be little details from the sources. These are going to be topics that have a great deal of information. Now, this ITC outline has 5 parts, right? Introduction, T1, T2, T3, and C. This is going to be turned into a 5-paragraph essay. If I wanted to write an essay that was longer, I could write I, T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, conclusion. And that would be developed into a 7-paragraph essay. If I wanted to only have 2 middle paragraphs, I might just write I, T1, T2, and C. And that would be developed into a 4-paragraph essay. So you can vary your number of T's depending on how long or short your essay will be at the end. A great place to start, though, is with a 5-paragraph essay. 5 paragraphs will result in an essay that is thorough, that is specific, that presents a good deal of information for your reader. So this is why we always begin by learning 5-paragraph essay structure. Okay, so T1, T2, and T3, the topics we're going to write about, guess where they come from? Not from our own brains, not from our background knowledge, not from a documentary we watched one time on the gold rush. We're going to find our topics right here in the text set. When we are writing to inform our reader about something, we are writing to inform them about what we read. So the information that we include in our essay must come from the text set. Now, we are going to use our knowledge of titles, headings, and subheadings to determine our T1, T2, and T3. So let's begin by selecting our T1 topic. So that's what we are going to write next to T1 on our planning outline. So if we go back to our text set and we look at source 1, this is titled The Gold Rush. There's a lot of information on this page at the very beginning of this text set about where gold comes from. So I think I'm going to make my T1, my very first topic, where gold comes from. Because if I'm talking about the history of gold in California, I should probably start at the beginning, right? Where it comes from. So in this article, in source 1, there is a lot of information about where gold comes from in paragraphs 1 through 3. So I'm going to put a big box around all of these paragraphs. I'm going to move my little summary. And I'm going to label this section T1, because this is where I'm going to get the information for my T1 paragraph. Now, after I select my first topic, I need to find my A's and my B's. Now, your A's and your B's are your subtopics. An easier way to understand subtopics is to think about them as if they were details or examples of your main topic. So your A is either a detail about your T1, a who, what, where, when, why, or how detail, or it is an example of your T1. It could be either a detail or an example. You could have 2 details, 2 examples, or 1 of each. So let's see if we can go back to the text set and find details about where gold comes from, or maybe an example of where gold comes from. So if we go back to this text set, I noticed that paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 are all about gold nuggets. So I'm going to make A, nuggets. And I'm going to label paragraph 1 and 2 A. So when I'm writing about my T1A subtopic, I will be getting my information from paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. Now my B subtopic, I need another detail or example about where gold comes from. Well, I noticed that paragraph 3 is all about how you separate gold from other materials and when you're looking for it, and how gold is usually found in a river. So you have to separate the gold from the dirt and the rocks and the other minerals. And you do this by a process called panning. So I think my B subtopic will be panning. So I will write that on my ITC outline next to B. And then I'm going to label paragraph 3B. So I know later on when I am writing my very first body paragraph, my T1 paragraph, I am going to be using information from this section of source 1. When I am writing about my A subtopic, I will be using information from paragraphs 1 and 2. And when I am writing about my B subtopic, I will be using information from paragraph number 3. So now let's look at T2. We need to find a second topic to inform our reader about. So another topic about the history of gold. We do not want it to have anything to do with where gold comes from, right? Because we're going to talk about that in T1. So we need a completely different topic for T2. Well, if we're writing about the history of gold, after we talk about where it came from, we should probably talk about the very first people to discover it. And who were the first people to discover gold? The 49ers. So T2 is going to be the 49ers. All right, now let's look for some details and examples we can include in our essay as our A and B subtopics for T2. So again, I'm going to box all of the information that I'm going to use in my T2 paragraph, and now I'm going to be looking for details or examples. Well, the first thing that I noticed is that it talks about how the 49ers, well, where were they from? Where was gold discovered? California. That seems pretty important. So I'm going to make my A subtopic California. That is a where detail. And that is going to be found in paragraph, information for that topic, I should say, will be found in paragraphs 4 through 7. It's a little blurry. Let me move that over. So I'm going to label paragraphs 4, 5, 6, and 7A. This is all about how the 49ers began in California. Gold was first discovered in California. If I go to the second page, paragraph 8, 9, and 10 is still all about my T2 topic, the 49ers. So I'm going to box all of this information as well. And again, going to label it T2 because it has more information about my T2 topic. Now I need another detail or example about the 49ers. So let's see, I'm going to talk about how they took place, or excuse me, they lived in California. That's where they were located. What's another detail I could include? Well, you know, 8, 9, 10, and 11 are all about the problems that the 49ers faced in California during the gold rush. So I think I'm going to make my B subtopic problems faced. So all of the difficulties that the 49ers encountered. So I'm going to label 8, 9, and 10 problems. Paragraph 11 really isn't about the problems that the 49ers face. This is more talking about the value of nuggets. So I'm not going to label paragraph 11B. But 8, 9, and 10 are all going to be about the problems that the 49ers faced. So that's why those paragraphs are labeled B inside of the T2 box. All right, we need one more topic. We need one more topic, our T3, about the history of gold. So first we're going to talk about where gold comes from. Then the next logical thing to discuss is the people that first discovered the plethora of gold in California. Those people are called the 49ers. Now, what would come after that if we're talking about the history of gold? Well, the next thing that occurred is going to be all of the business that developed in California, right? The entrepreneurs, they came next after the 49ers. So I'm going to label T3 business. So my third body paragraph, my T3 paragraph, is going to be about business. Where can I find information about that? Well, all on the second source. So I'm going to put a big box around paragraphs 12 through 17, and I'm going to label it T3. Now I need 2 details or 2 examples of businesses in California during this time. So I think I found 2 really good examples that we can write about. The first is Samuel Brandon. He is an example of a businessman during the time. If you remember, he was the merchant that first discovered how much there was to sell to all of the people that were panning for gold. And then the second entrepreneur, the second business that I would like to talk about is Levi Strauss, and how he originally went out there to sell canvas, and later, since he was a tailor and he had all of this knowledge of clothing, developed his business into a clothing line of blue jeans. So these A's and B's are examples of the businesses that were developed during this time. On my planning outline, I am going to label where I can find that information. So paragraph 14 is where we will find information about Samuel Brandon, and paragraph 17 is where we will find information about Levi Strauss. So now I have a complete ITC outline. Short, to the point, a few words for each part of the outline, the I, the T's, the A's and B's, and the C. And then I also have an article that has been boxed and labeled, so I know exactly where I'm going to be getting my information for each part of my essay. So now that you have had an opportunity to watch me read a text set and plan, you are going to have an opportunity to do the same thing. So you are going to, in just a few moments, read the Moon text set. Read it carefully and slowly to gain as much understanding as you can. After you have read the Moon passage set, you are going to write in response to one of these two prompts. You will either write an expository essay about the moon, or if your teacher is going to direct you to, you could respond to a more advanced prompt. The advanced prompt says, as of today, the moon is the only place astronauts have ever been to visit and set foot on. However, scientists believe that in the future, it may be possible for people to inhabit a place other than Earth. Life on the moon would present numerous challenges and obstacles for humans to overcome just to perform daily functions. Write an explanatory essay, write an explanatory article explaining how people would be able to reside on the moon. Your essay must be based on the ideas and information that can be found in the passage set. Now, both of these prompts have keywords that let us know that our purpose for writing is to inform our reader about a specific topic, right? We are conveying information in our essays. The key word in this first prompt is expository. The key word in the second prompt is explanatory. So your teacher will direct you to write either in response to the first prompt or the second prompt. You will complete an ITC outline just like you saw me do today. And the next time we meet, I will review a completed example for you and we can see how you did. Great job, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today's very first live lesson for grade 6 through 8. I will see you next time when we review your ITC outline and we begin writing our essays. The next time we meet, we'll begin writing our introduction paragraph. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.